The evening started like so many others, wrapped in that deep kind of quiet when the house settles, and every small sound feels too loud. Even the refrigerator's low hum seemed intrusive, and the hallway clocks ticking no longer hid in the background. It filled the air. Dinner had come and gone, the dishes rinsed in warm, soapy water that misted up my glasses. Still, the faint scent of roasted chicken and rosemary lingered, clinging to the walls like a memory. These stretches of solitude had become familiar. Once, they left me uneasy, tinged with guilt I couldn't quite name. But over time, I learned how to soften the silence with little rituals: a book, a glass of wine, a playlist I'd heard too many times. It was easier to lean into habit than to confront what was missing. But that night wasn't meant to blend into routine. There was an invitation I couldn't sidestep, a celebration for someone else's milestone. The kind of carefully curated event where people pose for pictures and raise glasses to a love that looks effortless. I wasn't in the mood, but I went anyway. I slipped into a green dress that hadn't seen the light of day in months. The fabric felt cool against my skin, smooth under my hands, until the zipper snagged halfway up my back. I tried once, twice, twisting awkwardly before sighing in surrender. That's when I called for help. He appeared in the doorway, casual, composed, with a kind of quiet steadiness that made you believe nothing could shake him. He had been in this house long enough that our lives moved in quiet parallel. Always polite, always careful, always aware of boundaries, but as he stepped closer, I caught the faint scent of cedar and citrus. His fingers grazed my shoulder blade as he found the zipper, sliding it upward in one seamless motion. There was nothing in that touch, and yet somehow there was. I thanked him, though my voice came out softer than I meant. For just a moment, our eyes met. Something flickered between us, something neither of us named. Later at the party, I played my role. I smiled, laughed, nodded, sipped champagne. But my thoughts kept drifting back to that moment in the hallway. My thoughts kept circling back to that moment in the hallway. A touch too fleeting to mean anything. A glance too brief to explain, yet impossible to forget. The days that followed felt strangely altered, even though nothing visible had changed. We still exchanged polite words over morning coffee, still crossed paths in the kitchen, but a quiet undercurrent had begun to run beneath it all. I started to notice the way his gaze lingered just a second longer than it should. How his smile curved in a way that made me wonder what he wasn't saying. It was harmless, I told myself, just tiny moments made louder by solitude. And yet, in the quiet hours when rain tapped softly against the windows and the house seemed to hold its breath, those memories replayed like a song I hadn't chosen but couldn't turn off. One afternoon, I found him sitting at the dining table, the glow of his laptop lighting his face. Our conversation began simply: school, plans, the future, but it shifted without warning into something deeper. He asked questions no one had asked me in years: what I missed, what I dreamed of, what I feared. The answers came easily, too easily, as if I'd been waiting all this time for someone to truly listen. Days turned into weeks. A brush of hands when passing a mug. A smile that lingered. A silence that carried more meaning than any words could. Nothing was spoken aloud, yet the air between us grew heavier with the truth neither of us dared to name. One evening, he leaned against the counter as I washed the dishes, his gaze steady and quiet. Finally, he said, "You seem different." "Different?" I asked. "How?" His eyes held mine unflinching. "Like you're somewhere else. Thinking about something you're not saying." I looked down at the water swirling in the sink, my heart pounding against my ribs. Maybe I was. Maybe I had been for a long time. He didn't move closer. He didn't have to. His silence said it all. That night, lying awake, the realization settled over me like a weight I couldn't shake. Nothing had happened. Not really. No kiss, no betrayal anyone could point to. And yet, in my thoughts, I'd already crossed a line. When life slipped back into its usual rhythm, so did the distance. Our words became polite again, our gestures measured, the quiet pull between us carefully folded away. But every so often, in the brief meeting of eyes or a brush of hands in the hallway, that spark returned, just for a heartbeat. And in that fleeting pulse, I understood something I never had before. Sometimes what unravels us isn't an action but a moment. A zipper half drawn, a glance held too long, a silence too heavy to bear. Infidelity doesn't always need a touch. Sometimes it begins and ends in the mind, leaving behind marks that no one else will ever see.